Hey everybody, it's Deanna Kosaraju with Global Tech Women. Welcome back to Voices 2015. I hope that you're enjoying the sessions that we have this week, and I am really excited about this session, Mentors and Role Models, the Best Practices in Many Cultures. Mentoring and role modeling is so important for women in technology around the world, and we have, I believe, one of the top experts in this area, Katy Dickinson. And she is going to walk us through what her learnings over, I believe, multiple decades on mentoring programs that she's set up and some great things that she's done with both mentoring and role modeling for women in tech around the world. So a couple things about this Spreecast session that you need to know. We have a chat window over here on the right-hand side. You're more than welcome to introduce yourself and say where you're from. One thing you need to know, though, is that you have to be logged into Spreecast in order to use the chat window. You know, it's kind of like leaving a comment on a blog or things like that. You often have to be logged in to do that. So if you're currently logged in as a visitor, you won't be able to use the chat window, but you know, we're more than welcome to participate and walk through this with us. And also, we've got a number of audio-visual items that we're going to run here. So I'm just giving you the heads up. We've got a couple of links to websites that we're going to ask you to click and to play video. And then we have a PowerPoint which will launch. And when it launches, you can drag and drop it anywhere on the screen. And then Katy's going to let us know what slide number she's on so that we can follow along. Because you have to advance the slide yourself. So she will be doing that for us. And then lastly, we have a YouTube video that we will put up on the screen, and that will also need to be played. So there will be a little play button like you normally see on a YouTube video. So with that, I think I've covered it all, I believe. So Katy, should I go ahead and put the PowerPoint up? Is that how you want to start?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to put that up and then I'm going to be in the background. So if you need anything from me, I will be here. You can drag and drop that anywhere on the screen so it's not interrupting your view of Katy or the chat window. And I'm handing it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Deanna. It's an honor to work with you. I've worked with you for many years in many circumstances, and this is a delightful opportunity. And I'm delighted to talk with the global audience about mentors and role models. So I'm on the title page, and on there you can see that I am the founder of a company called Mentoring Standard. We're just starting that up. If you'd like to know more, you can go to the URL mentoringstandard.com. So the second page is the abstract. So this is the talk you're hearing. It's about mentors and role models with examples, both information for mentors and mentees and for people interested in starting mentoring programs. So let's start with role models. What you see are two posters. One is emerging leaders from Africa and the Middle East, and the other is notable women in computing. This is 108 role models, and this was a project that we did. Susan Roger, who's a professor of computer science at Duke University, and my daughter and I did starting in last summer, and we distributed it at the Hopper Conference last year. So if you go on to page 4, you'll see that the project consists of playing cards, 54 playing cards, which is to say 52 regular cards and 2 jokers, on 2 different subjects. One is international senior technical women, and these are women all the way from Ada Lovelace in the 1800s all the way up to the present. And then there's also a group of emerging leaders from the Middle East and Africa who are in the Tech Women program, the U.S. State Department Tech Women program. So we're now going to play 2 of the videos, and while I'm going to ask you to play the first video, you're going to understand that this is started off as a Hopper Conference project, then it became a Kickstarter, We did crowdfunding, and we kicked that off before the end of the Hopper Conference. We got 5 times the funding we requested, and it is now a website where you can purchase or do a free download of these materials, and the website is there on the slide. So click on the first video to play that. And it's about 1 minute and 30 seconds. So I'm going to play it too, so we can both do it together. So you should be finishing up the video now, and you'll see that that's my daughter, Jessica, and that was the video for the Kickstarter for this to create the second edition. And the second edition was a big success. We did the first edition for about 300 decks. The second edition was for I think we did about 1,000, and we are now well into preparing updates to possibly even do a third edition. We've distributed 3,000 cards around the world, and about now people start to be curious about um, why did we create this deck? Why did we how did we pick people for the deck? So if you will go to the next video and play the next video, that will answer the question. So I'm going to play that too, so I know how long it is. And this is the video that ends in 1024426, and I'm playing it now. So if you finished watching that second video, you will see that the uh, reason for our creating this was not only to showcase some of the most honored women in the world of technology, but also to provide a wide range, demographically, geographically, and in terms of profession. So Deanna, we need to get the slides back. Are you there?
I'm here, and for some crazy reason, it just deleted them. So I'm going to put them back on.
Oh, okay.
Just give me about 20 seconds.
Okay. So hopefully folks are finishing up watching the video if they couldn't get it to play in the first place.
Yeah, it worked for both of them worked for me, so I was
Okay.
happy about that. Okay, here's your deck. I'm going away now.
Thank you. Okay, so we are back on the deck. We're just finishing up on page 4. On the top of page 4, you'll see some of the cards from the Notable Women in Computing deck, which is the senior women. And on the bottom, you're going to see some of the emerging leaders from the Middle East and Africa. So on page 5, again, the project history here is that Susan Roger and I did a poster for the Hopper Conference last year. The deck and the posters came out of that, and my daughter was the designer. And we designed them at camp, and then you see a picture of us at camp, my daughter and I, Jessica, and then Susan Roger is at the bottom, and you can see her opening the very first box of the very first cards. And our goal was to present notable, successful, and diverse technical women as role models, because we want girls and women to see the future for them, to see a future for themselves in these cards. Many of the women on the cards are very famous as mentors as well as role models. And the connection I'm making here is that it's not enough to look up to somebody, but you need to take that next step and work with them, and they need to work with you. That there's a piece of giving back that is that comes with being notable and famous and capable. And people reaching back to help other people along is part of being a role model. The 54 tech women all volunteered to be in the poster and on the deck and to be role models and mentors, as did the senior women. So on slide 6, you'll see a map. We're just revising this map, but this is our first map, and this shows where the first 500 decks were distributed to educators. Part of the project is that all the profits go to making new decks and new posters to send to educators around the world, and the first 500 educators, this is the map of where they went. We have added many countries since then, but the Kickstarter funders were so generous that we were able to send 500 decks to educators just from the Kickstarter, and we've sent many more since then. And if you go to page 7, you'll see some of the things people are doing with these decks. So in the upper right-hand corner, this is a group of kids playing a memory matching game at Maqasid School in Beirut, Lebanon. Another game that people play on the upper left is find the people who are similar, maybe Spanish surname, or in the lower right, they're from the South Asian diaspora, or sometimes in the lower left, they just play cards. But if you think about what it's like to be a girl who maybe doesn't know that there are notable women, that there are great women who have done the things that she wants to do, sitting and playing cards and noticing that every card is different and that every one of these women is absolutely remarkable and a great technical contributor at a worldwide level will make an impression, which is what we're doing here. So if you go to page 8, in the senior deck, I'm going to call out 2 people. One is Fran Allen at the top, and the other is Elon Lee at the bottom. Fran Allen, we made her the Queen of Hearts, and you can see there's a picture of her on a panel that I did in 2010 at the Hopper Conference. She was a role model and mentor and encouraged generations of technical girls and women at the Hopper Conference, as well as being the first woman to win a Turing Award, the first IBM fellow who was a woman. And I made her the Queen of Hearts because I remember when I was at the Hopper Conference one year, she got a big award, and the award was $10,000. And she turned around and handed the check back and said, I want to use this to bring more women to the Hopper Conference, women who could never get here. And that money went to bring 3 people the next year, and then Google and Microsoft and other companies contributed and have made that a regular scholarship. So she gets the Queen of Hearts for being one of the greatest mentors I've ever seen in my life. But she not only encourages people at a personal level, but she gives from her heart, from her time, and from her substance to help other people. Dilong Lee is similarly generous with her time and her wisdom. And that's a picture of her and me, her holding up her card. She was very happy with having that card. And she has been a leader both in America and Vietnam. She came to America as a teenager, not speaking English, and yet graduated at the head of her class from a major American university, was the first Asian and the first woman to be a fellow and a senior fellow at Texas Instruments. She is absolutely remarkable, and again, has not only acted as a role model, but has been an absolutely remarkable mentor in 2 different countries. So that's what I mean by role models and mentors. Going on to page 9, about now you may be wondering, what do mentors do? Mentors advise and inspire. In short terms, they make introductions. So a mentor might say, hey, you need to meet this person. You need to consider what this company does or what this program does. They make introductions. They give recommendations to best resources. Read this book, take this class. You need to get more experience as a negotiator, as a public speaker. You need to do specific things. And then the third thing they do is to give feedback. So if I were meeting with somebody and they kept saying over and over again, I don't want this, I don't want this, in the third meeting I might say something like, well, I've heard you say this repeatedly. Can you tell me why you're saying that? Could you give me some background on that? And then we could talk about it. And I'm not here to make choices for them. I'm here to say, I hear you doing this. I see you doing this. My understanding, my experience leads me to understand this. Can we talk about that? So it's introductions, recommendations, and feedback. And also the mentee just watches the mentor think and work and function, and may learn to function and solve problems in a different way through watching. So what's the benefit of mentoring? There are different benefits to mentees and to mentors. So starting with mentees, you'll see a list here on page 10, measurable reports, and there are many, many reports on mentoring and the benefits of mentoring, greater productivity, confidence, reduced stress, better relationships, larger network, and understanding their career path. These are the ones that come up over and over again on lists as to what do mentees get out of this. What do mentors get on it? On page 11, a mentoring program is tied to the success of its mentors. The mentors have to function, they have to function well, and they have to want to come back. In a successful program, mentors will come back year after year after year. So what motivates a very senior person who is very, very busy to come back and spend an hour a week or maybe more with a mentee? They want to pay it forward. None of us ever get to where we are in life without having people to help us. We all have been helped. You've been helped. I've been helped. People that you admire and people that I admire have all been helped by other people. And the only way people get someplace is by the good grace and the generosity of other people. And when we get to a senior place, we realize that we need to pay that back. We need to reach back and help other people. We need to walk ahead of them on the path and say, this is how I went. Let's talk about how it goes for you. Mentoring also helps mentors develop their coaching and leadership skills. So if you're a technical person and you're deep into being a geek and you never actually talk to people, being a mentor is a way of developing some of those skills. You extend your personal and professional network. I meet more people through my mentees than through probably any other category of people I work with, and they're different. I don't, I meet different people through my mentees because their spheres, their understanding, their context is different. And it enriches my life to know the people that they know. Um, Also, when you get to be more mature in your career, you might have forgotten some of the things you learned in school. You may not have learned those things in school. Many people who are in their 50s or 60s who are now leaders in the corporate world or in the academic world, they may not have used social media until fairly recently. Their mentee can teach them. This is called reverse mentoring. They can also learn a lot about how their company works. I had a mentor who served many times in one of my programs. He was in New Jersey. I'm in San Jose, California, just south of San Francisco. He was on the other side of the United States, and I matched him with mentees all over the world. And one time I matched him when he was the head engineer of software. I matched him with somebody who was a hardware engineer in China, in Beijing, and there was no relationship in terms of reporting, but we were all in the same company. But he had people in China, people who were in his management chain, and by him mentoring somebody who wasn't in his management chain but was in the same location, he learned a lot about how his staff in China worked. Because when you become a very senior executive, many times your staff will buffer you, meaning try and protect you from finding out things or being too aware of things that might make more work for them. It happens. And by being a mentor as a senior person, you learn about how your company really works because the person you're going to be mentoring is dealing with things that you as a senior person may never deal with. So you get a great deal of more understanding of effective ways to work, more tools, and more knowledge of your company and organization. And those are all things that mentors have told me year after year are some of the most valuable parts of being a mentor. So going on to page 12, why do companies have mentoring programs? There are many reasons, but these are the top four. One is productivity gains, specific productivity gains, more higher performance reviews, a faster rate of promotion, measurable, specific, and amazing return on investment. The second is leadership and career development. Many companies don't have leadership and career development programs. A mentoring program is such a program and is one that all the participants want, and it can take a company into a much better place in terms of its staff, interactions, communications, satisfaction. The third is diversity awareness and support. Mentoring disproportionately benefits minorities. And by minorities, I mean statistical minorities. So when I was working for Sun Microsystems in our Beijing office, the minorities were people who were not Chinese or who were from Korea. That was the statistical minorities. They didn't have people from some countries. They didn't, their minority, the majority for them were people from mainland China, and then they had these two larger groups of minorities. So for them, diversity was making sure that people who were not from mainland China could still function effectively. In different countries, minorities means different things. It's a statistical thing. And being aware of how a minority functions within the larger organization is important. Minorities, because they are um, working harder at this, because they're more aware of it, because the mentoring program gives them access to information and communication and a polish that maybe they wouldn't have had otherwise, they disproportionately benefit from the program. And so diversity awareness and support turns out to be a very strong and measurably excellent benefit for mentoring, coming from a mentoring program for a company. And then retention improvement and staff satisfaction. In a company that doesn't have a career or leadership program, this can cause people to want to stay longer than perhaps they would otherwise, and staff satisfaction. So At the program that I developed and ran for 10 years at Sun Microsystems, we had 90 to 95% satisfaction quarter over quarter for 10 years. And that's a well-run mentoring program, and that's worth having as a number. And there are very few programs other than mentoring that can boast those kinds of returns and measurable benefits to a company. So going on to page 13, I've been using the word mentoring a lot. I'm going to talk about two other words: mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship. People often use these words interchangeably, but they don't mean exactly the same thing. So let's go through them. On the first row, a sponsor is somebody who is in a hierarchical or senior position who wants to train someone up as their successor or as a leader. So if I'm an executive vice president and I see somebody that could be on my staff in maybe a year or two if they got help, or could be my successor in 5 years, I will want to train them up. So the power here is hierarchical or positional authority. The topic we discuss is succession planning and leadership building. This goes on for years. The duration is years. The boundaries are that it's part of regular work. We both work for the same company and we're in the same management chain. And then the reward is that the mentee gets career direction and protection during this growth period and during this sponsorship period. So sponsorship in the areas of power, topic, duration, boundaries, and reward is quite different than the next line, which is coaching. Coaching, the power is special knowledge. The coach knows something that the student doesn't know. I know how to do negotiation or public speaking or something that the student doesn't know. So the power is my knowledge, the student's lack of knowledge. The topic is transfer of specific information. I teach you how to do this. It's short term. It's a particular class or a particular program. It's within the context or boundaries of a school or a program. And the student passes a test and is done. And as a coach, I get paid. So those are the boundaries. That is what coaching is. Now, mentoring, the power is not hierarchical. It is not special knowledge. It is wisdom. The mentor knows things, has experience that the mentee does not have. They're discussing career or personal growth. It takes 6 to 12 months in most cases. It's within the scope of a mentoring program in most cases, in many cases. And it's for mutual learning, recommendations, and feedback. So you can see that while mentors may often coach, in addition, the focus is within these scopes, it's career or personal growth. And the sponsor is really quite different. So when I say mentoring, I'm not talking so much about coaching and sponsorship, although from time to time those things may overlap. So on page 14, let me give you some examples. I'm going to give you an example of two different programs. The first program is Tech Women. Tech Women is a program of the U.S. State Department Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. It started as a result of a speech that United States President Barack Obama gave in 2009 in Cairo, where he talked about bringing the Muslim and American worlds together. And in 2010, the then Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton was asked to create a program to support the topic of that speech. And she asked the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs of the State Department to create something. They put out request for proposal. The IIE, the Institute for International Education, that also runs the Fulbright program, one of the most famous programs of the State Department, which has been around for 80 years. IIE bid on it. And the subcontractor was the Anita Borg Institute, which also runs the Hopper Conference, and I was working with them. And so I ended up helping to design the Tech Women program in 2010 and 2011, and I've continued to work on it as a volunteer ever since. Part of what the program does is it asks women to not only come to the Silicon Valley for a month and work with Silicon Valley companies, but then to go back and benefit their home communities and to be mentors in their home communities. They benefit from mentoring here and then they go home. So here are two examples. One is Heba Hosny. Heba is in Cairo. She was a Tech Women Emerging Leader in 2012. And when she went home, she did a startup, and she wanted to be in this competition that was being held at the MIT Media Lab. Egypt Negma was the name of the competition. She didn't have the money to come to the United States, so a group of the mentors, including me, we had parties, we had events, we collected money, and we got her here. It wasn't something we were required to do. It wasn't part of the program, but we think very highly of her, and we wanted her to have a shot at this. So we continued to reach out to her even after the program was done. She wasn't my mentee formally, but she's somebody that I think highly of. So this is an example of how the group of mentors continue to be in communication with the emerging leaders or the mentees. Another example is Josette Cole, who was a emerging leader in 2013. She's from Sierra Leone. She's a petroleum engineer, and her cultural mentor reached out to me. We got to talking, and Josette wanted to meet some senior technical petroleum engineers here in the United States while she was visiting during the Tech Women program. And we were able to set up a time for her to spend a morning with a vice president of a major oil company talking about what were good next steps for her professionally. These are examples of some of the benefits, some of the interactions, some of the things that the program does. So going on to page 15, some stats about the Tech Women program. There have been 250 mentors from 89 Silicon Valley companies have served in the Tech Women program, working with 156 mentees from 16 countries. The 16 countries are from the Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and we're just adding 5 new countries in Central Asia for 2015. To give you an idea, 160 of the mentors in 2014 had served before. So remember how I said mentors coming back is what makes a program continue well. So part of the program is also that the mentors go to visit the mentees. It's not all them coming to us and us dispensing our wisdom. We go to their home countries. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to Tunisia. I've been to South Africa already this year, and I'm going to Tunisia with one of the delegations to meet the Tech Women Emerging Leaders in Tunisia and to make presentations. But here's some examples of other interactions that happened during the delegation. So Adla Chatila, who was my mentee in 2012, who is the CIO, Chief Information Officer, and CFO, Chief Financial Officer from Maqasid in Lebanon. After the Jordan delegation, my daughter and I went to visit her in Lebanon, and she hosted us, and we did tours of the Maqasid schools. So remember I showed you a picture of the kids in the Maqasid schools using the cards. We knew to donate to that school because we'd been there. And Adla was incredibly generous in spending time and taking us on tours and introducing us to people and helping us to understand how the technical world in Lebanon works. Another example is Nasha Laisi, who for the Tech Women delegation to Morocco last year, when we were in Morocco, she hosted the entire delegation. This is like, I think it was 40 people at her house, gave us a big dinner, had a fashion show of kaftans, and had a drum band, and it was an amazing experience. So they give to us and we give to them. It's a mutual understanding, a mutual exchange, and mentoring is mutual. It's not one person giving from their life and the other one only taking. Both parties must learn. So on page 16, we're coming up on our third video. In mentoring and culture, not all languages have a word for mentoring. Arabic doesn't. So I had 2 mentees this last October, Siham Al Jafre and Mai Temras. Siham's from Jordan and Mai is from Palestine. And I'm going to let you play a video of Siham talking in Arabic about mentoring and Arab culture and how those two things interact. So if we go ahead and play the third video. So that was Siham on how mentoring works in Arab culture and the relationship between mentoring and hospitality, which is a very important part of Arab culture. Um, so going on to page 17, I wanted to show you some pictures of the delegation in January. This is us in South Africa. And in the upper left, you can see we had two of the ladies host events for us, one in Johannesburg and other in Cape Town. We actually had three in a third one in Cape Town, but she didn't ask to be on a card. And there you can see pictures of us, the delegation as a group, one of the vice presidents at Twitter making a presentation, us visiting the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg and presenting Tech Women posters to the dignitaries and the organizations in South Africa. So on page 18, the second example is Sun Microsystems. I created and managed the mentoring program at Sun Microsystems. I ran it for 10 years. And we had, this was one of several mentoring programs at Sun. And over 7,300 people participated in the program. We got over 1,000% return on investment measured by an external company and then reported on in a Gartner report. As I said, 93% satisfaction, 88% of the mentors worked remotely in a different city, different state, different country from their mentees in 30 locations, and 70% of the mentors were executives, directors, vice presidents, fellows, distinguished engineers, senior distinguished engineers. And we ran special programs not only for the United States, but for China, India, Germany, Israel, Russia, Czech Republic, France, and Ireland. And you can see on the lower left a picture of us with our champion, Dr. Greg Papadopoulos, who was the Chief Technology Officer. In the middle is the technical report, Sun Mentoring 1996 to 2009, that I published in 2009. And on the right, you can see a poster that they did of me as the mentoring queen. On page 19, not to go through this in a lot of detail, but this program was very heavily reported on from 2003 to the present. It has been, because it was one of the few companies that reported on at a detail level its mentoring success and statistics, it has been heavily reported on as recently as in September in the Boston Globe. And there's a quote on page 20 about mentoring success. This is from the ACM, Association for Computing Machinery Communications, by Maria Klawe, the president of Harvey Med College, Telly Whitney, who's the president of the Anita Borg Institute, and Carolyn Samar, who is speaking next on the Voices Conference, about the importance of mentoring and the success of the program that we ran at Sun Microsystems. On page 21, you can see the best practices, worst practices. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is available to you. It's part of the Sun report, which is available free, and I'm going to give you all the URLs on that in the resources section. It's also part of the Mentoring in a Box. And this is the single page of that report that's been republished most often. So it has been republished over and over and over again, which leads me to understand that there's a lot of value in having a one page on best practices. So key learnings at Sun, I did my first report about the Sun program in 2006 at the Hopper Conference. And here it was called 5 Years of Mentoring by the Numbers. We were working with different groups, including MentorNet and the which is a mentoring program for undergraduates, and then the faculty mentoring program at Georgia Tech. And you can see here on page 22 that we came away with a lot of different understandings of the key values of mentoring, and in particular that not to expect or promise miracles. The goal is not perfection, but improvement, that it's iterative. And you can go through these in great detail when you look at the slides on the recording after the talk is finished. On page 23, not everything was perfect. We did have challenges, and some of those challenges were things like people saying, what's in it for me? Why should I go to the trouble of creating this? We had, some turf battles, and we had to do a lot of work in partnering with Human Resources, HR. And there were ongoing challenges, including trying to make this program scale, how to make it even bigger than it was. Now, I've recently read that there's a program at the University of Munich that's gotten up to 4,000 people in a single term. That's the largest group I've seen. But there may be other mentoring programs that are large. It is hard to make a large mentoring program. Most mentoring programs top out at several hundred one-on-one matches. But the better your management of the program, the more likely it is you can make it scale. So on page 24, these are 9 key questions that you would need to answer before you started a mentoring program. If you wanted to create your own mentoring program, you have to answer some very basic questions, because mentoring is a very personal thing. You're asking very senior people to spend of their heart, to spend of their time, and you have to get people to buy into it. And you have to answer questions like, what is the goal of the program? What problem are you solving? Why use a mentoring program? Why not do something else? Who's your customer? Who's responsible for the program? Who's going to pay for it? And these are the kinds of questions that you must resolve in advance. And this is part of a group of documents that I put together when I worked for Everwise called Mentoring in a Box. Again, this is available for free, and I'll give you the URL for that. 12 best practices that came out of some research I did for the Hopper Conference in 2013 are listed here. What I found studying many mentoring programs is that they mostly had all of these things in common. Things like having clear benefits, strong support, detailed data reporting, paid program staff. These were all things that were in common with programs that continue long term. On page 26, 5 key success elements. If you're going to create a mentoring program, you need to have that strong and visible long-term executive support. Mentoring has to be real work, real time. It has to be something that people can do during the workday. You're not expecting them to do it on the lunch hour or on their free time or after work. The program needs to be well managed so that it attracts a diverse and wide variety of people. The program needs to be run for the convenience of the mentors. They are your jewels. They are the thing that is going to make you successful, and they need to be finding this a convenient thing to do. And you need to provide good tools. So page 27, common program mistakes. No program staff, or expecting people to do it in their spare time. Taking everybody, not selecting. That's a mistake. Some people shouldn't be in a mentoring program. They're having problems enough in their life. You have to be selective. They have to be ready and at a place where they can take this on. Not allowing enough time. Some people say, oh, we'll do it in 6 weeks. That's not going to happen. People have to have time to live into the experience, to make it a part of themselves. mentees take a long time to understand what they're being taught, sometimes years, and you need to allow time for them to live into the learnings that they are being given, and not collecting feedback and not analyzing that feedback. You need to know if there's a problem, and you need to be able to tell what the patterns are, so that you can correct before things get ugly. On page 28, there's a list of the Mentoring in a Box contents. And these are free. And the download URL is there on the page. So there's the Read Me First that has the 9 questions that I just ran through. It has a kickoff guide. It has a writable template. It has sample documents. It has the best practices, worst practices, and it has that mentoring, coaching versus sponsorship. It has an earlier version of that table as well, so that all of those are available for free. So on the resources, I've given you many of the documents that I have referred to here with the URLs. So some of them are not free. So the Gartner report, for example, is not free, but many of them are, and many of them are interactive. So for example, the CRAW Anita Borg Institute Wikipedia project, you can contribute names of notable women that you think should be honored. You can go to that site and you can put in names. You can't add them to the list, but you can submit them for consideration on the list. So many of the documents that I've talked about are here, and most of them are free, and they're available to you on the URLs that you're seeing there. Going on to the second page, even the technical report that I published in 2009 at Sun is free. And then here on the last page, this is about me, but more importantly, it's about mentoring standards. So we're doing a startup. Kathy Jenks and I are starting up a company called Mentoring Standard, and part of our motivation here is that what we saw at Sun and what we saw at Tech Women, and what we've seen with other mentoring programs that I've created and run, is that there are things that work and there are things that don't work, and that we want to, we're developing a system for accreditation and certification of both organizations and individuals, so that there is a way, an objective standard for mentoring, so that people don't waste their time trying to make it up, but they can follow good standard methodologies, things that will work for them in particular, and will acknowledge their success and allow them to transfer that capability that they had as a mentor. They developed skills and mechanisms that work for them. They can go from organization to organization and from company to company. So those are the slides. I wanted to briefly pause and see if there were any questions. I believe that you can write those questions on the right side if there are questions, and if not, I can go back through some more examples. I'm going to pause here for a minute to see what kind of questions there might be. Okay. Deanna, can you put up the slides again, and we'll I can go back. I wanted to make sure that I covered everything since there were so many slides. But if folks don't have any questions, there's some stuff I could spend some more time on. Okay. So here we are back on the slides. And I wanted to spend a little more time on slide number 18. So one of the questions that people often ask when we talk about return on investment is, how do you measure that? Return on investment on a mentoring program, there's a lot of things you could measure, but many of them are subjective. So how I feel about something is very subjective, but you can measure both internal and external the success of a program within a company or an organization or a school. So a subjective measure would be I would do a survey and the person would answer the survey, and on a scale of 1 to 7, how do you feel? Was this program valuable? Was it successful? Was your time well spent? You can measure things like if you had a group of people that didn't go through a mentoring program, they got promoted at this rate. The people within the mentoring program got promoted at this higher rate. Those are all kind of clear things that you can measure through surveys and through an analysis of HR data. However, return on investment is a little trickier because you have to decide um, how does the program as a whole benefit the company or the organization as a whole. And what we did was um, there was an external company called Capital Analytics that came in and looked at one of the mentoring programs at Sun. And they took a group of people and they measured how they did in terms of performance and in terms of reward and in terms of satisfaction and many different aspects. And then they were in a mentoring program and they measured them again. And they measured more particularly what they were paid before and what they were paid within, a year after, and I think it was 2 years after. And then they compared that to the baseline of the company. And so if you accept that the pay that a person gets is a measure of their value, now, that's not an absolute thing. Some people get paid more than they should, and some people get paid less than they should. But in a general way, somebody gets paid in accordance with their value to the organization. Then a higher valuation of their work would indicate more value. More pay, meaning more value. So what we saw was that there was a 1,000% gain over people who weren't in the mentoring program compared to the people who were in the mentoring program. There was 1,000% return based on the salary, uh, the greater salary that they got compared to the people who weren't in the mentoring program. And if you go to the Sun Labs mentoring report I published in 2009, there's actually a whole chapter on return on investment and how we measured it and what Capital Analytics said and what the Gartner report said and the mistake that was made where they swapped some of the headers, and then we reanalyzed all the data to make sure that that was the only mistake, and it was the only mistake. But so one of the conclusions that they drew wasn't correct because they swapped the header, but we corrected it. And it's all, we went through the details because we had in 2009 we had some time while Sun was being acquired by Oracle. We had some time to work through all of that. But it appears that in that case, the return on investment for the mentoring program was extravagantly good. Now, other companies have also seen a very high return on investment, not as good as what Sun saw. There's a company called Sodexo that has published its return on investment for its mentoring program, and I think they were running at something like 150 to 200% as opposed to 1,000%. It's still very, very impressive, but it's at a lower level. So some of this depends on how you're collecting the data and how you're analyzing the data, but in general, the return on investment for a mentoring program to the hosting organization is extraordinary and extraordinarily higher than any other kind of program that company might invest in. So mentoring as a methodology has an extraordinary return, not only to the individuals, to the mentees, to the mentors, to all of the participants, but to the organization as a whole. So I highly recommend it to you. I hope that you will look at the slides in detail when you have a chance, and that you will contact me with any questions because I would be delighted to hear from you. And Deanna, I think we're right on time here.
Thanks, Katy. I had one quick question. You had mentioned that not all people should be considered for a mentoring program, that sometimes they're just not ready, they're not in a position. So obviously that's a factor in determining who should be a mentee, but do you have some traits or some things that you see in a potential mentee that you would consider ideal for them being successful in a program?
Yeah. So if somebody wants to be a mentee, um, they should have some idea of what they want to learn, maybe three things that they want to learn. And it doesn't have to be stuff that they can, always share with their boss. Sometimes people have things that they want to learn that they really need to learn that they don't want to talk about with their boss, like work-life balance. How can I be an incredible engineer and a good parent as well? Might not be something they feel comfortable telling their boss, but it might be something they really need to learn. Or if you're from another country and you're trying to work in English in America and you can't really admit to your boss that the English thing is getting in the way, you might want to get yourself some coaching in that, but you also might want to work with a mentor on what methodology and what communication mechanisms work better in America, than from the country you're coming from, some cultural understanding. So you have to have in your head what you want to learn. What doesn't work is if you think it's magic. So if you come into the program and say, make me better, make sure I get a promotion, make sure that I get paid lots and lots of money, that's not going to work. There's no magic here. There's lots of hard work. The mentee is going to be doing most of the hard work. And the mentee who has some idea of what they want in terms of specific learning is going to do better. The other piece of this is that the mentee should have some idea of where they want to go. So when people say, I don't know who to pick as a mentor, they say, well, think about yourself. Think about what kind of path are you walking on? Is it a technical path? Are you trying to do social good? Do you want to make the greatest technology change in the world? Do you want to change the world for the better? Do you want to be a great teacher? Do you just want to be a great parent and get a great income? What is it? What's the path that you're working on? What path are you walking down? Now, tell me who's walking ahead of you on that path. Who do you admire? And what are the characteristics of that person that you admire? Because in picking a mentor, in being matched with a mentor, you have to have some idea of who can help you with the things that you want to learn. And a lot of this is internal. When I'm doing a mentoring program, there's going to be all sorts of selection criteria and applications and all of that. And I don't necessarily expect that people will understand everything about what they want to learn at the beginning, but they should have some basic idea of what do they want to learn and what are the characteristics of a person who could teach them that. So, for example, when we were at Sun Microsystems, many people would want to be matched with Dr. James Gosling, who was the person who wrote the Java programming language. And they would want him because he's a great technical contributor. But I would tell them he's also a great dad. And you might want to talk to him because you wanted to do work-life balance in a technical context. That something that somebody is famous for is not necessarily the only thing that they're bringing into that possible relationship. And he served in the program twice, and the technical piece is only a piece. The whole mentoring conversation is a whole life conversation, and you need to do a lot of thinking about where are you, what do you want to learn, what's the path you're walking down, and what are the characteristics or capabilities or experience of a person that you want to help you get to that next level. So those are the kinds of things. And if somebody's not prepared to do that, if they just want to sort of sit there and say, make the magic happen and give me a promotion, it's not going to work so well.
Yeah, I think understanding that all of that work's going to be internal. It's not going to be waving the magic wand and making everyone bend your way. It's really about the internal work that you're going to have to do to move to what it is you're trying to achieve.
It is hard work, and in fact, we've consistently seen that more mentees give up than more mentors. You know, the mentors, they know what they're getting into. They understand this is going to be it's going to be hard work and a lot of time, and that they're up for it. They've seen it before, they've done it before, and they know what they're getting into. A lot of times, the mentees will start off and they'll be all enthusiastic, and about 2 months in, they're like, "I've got work to do. This is pulling away from my work," and that's why when we do a program within a company, we make sure that the manager writes a letter of recommendation, making sure that the mentee can be in the program, so they know that the manager has already said that they can spend that time, because it does take time, and it takes a lot of emotional energy, and it takes a lot of uh, uh, work. It's just work, and the mentee needs to spend that
Right.
time. And if they can't do it, then if they're not prepared to do it, if they just had a baby, or their mom's in the hospital, that's probably not a really great time to be doing some serious life professional work. They need to be at a place where they have the time to put that energy in.
Yeah, they have to clear that mental space. They
Yeah,
can't have lots of things going on that are requiring that energy. You've got to create that space for it, or it's just not going to work. So,
that's right. And you
well, this
also
has
have to
been
have
a
the time.
fascinating talk. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure a lot of people will be watching the recording. I put the link up to the deck so people can download that and they can see that on the recording. And so I think we're wrapping up. So Katy, as usual, thank you for a great talk. Very
Thank you.
fascinating topic, one that is near and dear to global tech women. And I'm hoping that we can collaborate with each other as you launch your new startup and figure out ways how we can get mentoring to more women in technology around the world.
I'd love to work with you, as always. It's such a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for your great work in the Voices Conference. It's doing very, very well, and I know how proud you are of it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for participating, attending, and watching all of our videos. It was great. It worked out well. So if you have any feedback, questions, comments, ideas, send them to me at deanna@globaltechwomen.com. And I also hope that you will join our Facebook group if you haven't already. We have nearly 4,000 people that are on that list, and we get into some very interesting topics on there, and we talk about news on a regional, national, and international level. And I put that Facebook group link up there in the chat